My golden boy brother scheduled his wedding for the exact same day as mine. Predictably, our parents chose to attend his instead. I understand, I told them. But on the day of the weddings, they showed up at my venue to mock me, and were silenced instantly. So my parents and my brother tried to sabotage the most important day of my life. They thought they were going to humiliate me one final time. Instead, my father-in-law stood up during the reception and delivered a single sentence that brought my brother's entire world crashing down around him. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Let me start from the beginning. My name is Nathan. I'm 29 years old, and for most of my life, I was the invisible son, the backup, the kid who existed in the background while my older brother Brandon soaked up every ounce of attention, praise, and resources our family had to offer. This is the story of how that dynamic finally came to an end. It started with a phone call 3 weeks before my wedding. I was in the kitchen of the apartment I shared with my fiancée Megan when my phone lit up with my mother's name. I felt that familiar dull ache settle into my stomach. The same one I'd been carrying around since childhood. The one that showed up every time I saw their number on my screen. I answered anyway because apparently I never learned. "Nathan," she said, her voice light and breezy, like she was commenting on the weather forecast. "Just calling to let you know your father and I have made a decision. We'll be attending Brandon's wedding." I leaned against the kitchen counter. The cold marble pressed through my shirt. Megan looked up from across the room, where she'd been scrolling through vendor emails for our reception. Her smile faded when she saw my expression. She knew that look. She'd seen it every time my family came up in conversation. "Of course," my mother continued, completely oblivious to the bomb she'd just dropped. "This is just, well, he's the firstborn. You understand? It's more traditional." I let those words sink in. More traditional. That was their excuse. Their justification for choosing him over me for the 10,000th time. I should have been angry. I should have felt something. But honestly, I was just tired. Bone deep exhausted from a lifetime of coming in second place. "I understand," I said. My voice came out quiet and steady. Calm. Years of practice will do that to you. Years of swallowing disappointment until it becomes as natural as breathing. "Oh, good," she said, relief flooding her tone like she'd been worried I might cause a scene. "We just felt so terrible about the clash. What a crazy coincidence, right? The date's ending up on the same day as yours. We'll try to pop over to your little event afterward if we have time. No promises, though. Your little event." That's what she called my wedding. The day I was marrying the love of my life. The most important day of my existence. A little event. Like it was a neighborhood garage sale they might swing by if they weren't too tired from the real celebration. I didn't say anything. I just listened to the hollow silence on the line. Listened to the complete lack of awareness in her breathing. She genuinely didn't understand what she was doing. Or maybe she did, and just didn't care. After 29 years, I still couldn't tell which was worse. "Well, I have to run," she chirped with that fake cheerfulness she used when she wanted to end a conversation before it got uncomfortable. "Lots to do for Brandon's big day. Love you." The line went dead. I slowly lowered the phone and stared at it for a long moment. 3 words flashing through my mind on repeat. They chose him. They chose him. They chose him. Of course they did. They had always chosen him. Every single time, without fail, for my entire life. Every birthday where his gifts dwarfed mine. Every Christmas where he opened presents for an hour while I got through my pile in 10 minutes. Every school event they missed because Brandon had something going on. Every achievement of mine that got a distracted nod while his mediocre accomplishments got standing ovations. But here's the thing my mother didn't know. Here's what my father didn't know. Here's what my golden boy brother Brandon had absolutely no idea about. Their coincidence wasn't a coincidence at all, and my little event was about to change everything. Megan walked over and took my hand. Her grip was firm and warm. Her eyes held that fierce, protective light I'd fallen in love with. The look that said she would burn the world down for me if I asked her to. "It's okay," I told her. And for the first time in my life when I said those words, I actually meant them. Everything is going exactly as planned. To understand the plan, you have to understand the pain. And that pain started long before any wedding was on the horizon. It started when I was a kid growing up in the permanent shadow of a brother who was apparently born shining while I was born to be furniture, to be background noise, to be the spare kid they kept around just in case something happened to the real one. But the actual story begins on a Tuesday evening 6 months before that phone call. The night the woman I loved more than anything looked at me across a candlelit table and changed my entire life forever. Only it wasn't me asking the question. It was her. Megan and I had been together for 3 years at that point. 3 years of actually feeling seen for the first time in my life. 3 years of feeling like I was more than enough. Like I was the main character in at least one story. We were at our favorite little Italian restaurant downtown. The kind with checkered tablecloths and empty bottles used as candle holders. The walls were covered in old black and white photos of someone's Italian grandmother, and the owner knew us by name because we came every month on the anniversary of our first date. I was rambling on about some coding problem at work, probably boring her to death talking about database optimization or API integrations or whatever had been eating my brain that week. She always listened, though. That was the thing about Megan. She actually listened, even when she had no idea what I was talking about. Then she suddenly put her hand over mine, silencing me mid-sentence. "Nathan," she said, her voice soft but serious. "I love you." "I love you too," I said, my heart doing a little flip. Something about her tone felt different, heavier, more intentional. She took a deep breath. "I know things are supposed to happen a certain way. The guy is supposed to do this part. There's a whole script society wrote for these moments. But I also know you. I know you overthink everything because you're always worried you're not worthy of good things happening to you." My throat tightened. She saw right through me. She always had. From the first date when she'd asked about my family, and I'd given some vague non-answer, and she'd just nodded and said, "That bad, huh?" without pushing. She understood me in ways I didn't even understand myself. She slid her other hand into her purse and pulled out a small wooden box. Not a ring box. Something different. More personal somehow. She opened it, and inside, nestled on black velvet, was a beautiful classic watch. Silver face, leather band, elegant without being flashy. "Nathan," she said, her eyes locked on mine, "I don't want to spend my life with anyone else. Will you marry me?" Tears welled up in my eyes. Not just tears of joy, tears of this profound, overwhelming relief I didn't know I'd been waiting my whole life to feel. Someone chose me. Actively chose me. Not because they had to. Not because of obligation or blood or tradition. Because they wanted to. Someone saw all my broken pieces and didn't just accept them. She loved them. I could barely speak. I just nodded like an idiot, this huge, goofy grin spreading across my face as she slid the watch onto my wrist. It fit perfectly. Of course it did. "Yes," I finally managed to say through the lump in my throat. 1,000 times yes. The restaurant erupted in applause. Apparently everyone had been watching. The owner brought over a bottle of sparkling cider on the house and kissed both our cheeks. It was perfect. Everything about that night was perfect. The happiness was so pure and bright it almost hurt. But as we left the restaurant that night, walking hand in hand through the cool evening air, a familiar darkness started creeping in at the edges of my joy. That old, unwelcome guest that showed up every time something good happened to me. The inevitable next step. Telling our families. Telling Megan's parents was like something out of a movie. The kind of movie I used to watch as a kid and assume was pure fantasy, because surely no family actually worked like that. Her father, Mr. Mitchell, was this warm, imposing man with a handshake that could probably crush walnuts, and a laugh that filled whatever room he was in. He was the CEO of Mitchell Financial, a major investment firm he'd built from the ground up over 30 years. Started with nothing but a cheap suit and a willingness to work 18-hour days. Now he had offices in 3 cities and a reputation for integrity that money couldn't buy. But despite his success, he was the most down-to-earth person you'd ever meet. The kind of guy who knew every employee's name, who stayed late to help the cleaning staff when they were short-handed, who never forgot that he'd come from nothing. When we told him the news, he pulled me into a hug that literally lifted me off the ground. I'm not a small guy either. He just had that kind of energy. "Welcome to the family, son," he boomed, his voice cracking slightly on the last word. "I always knew you were the one for her." Her mother, a woman of incredible grace and warmth who ran a nonprofit providing scholarships to first-generation college students, kissed my cheek and told me she'd always hoped I'd be the one. "You make her laugh," Mrs. Mitchell said, holding my hands in hers. "Real laughs. The kind she had as a little girl. That's all a mother wants for her daughter." They were a real family. The kind I'd only ever read about in books or seen in movies. The kind I'd assumed were fictional, because my experience told me families didn't actually work that way. Then Mr. Mitchell clapped me on the shoulder. "Well, we'll have to meet your parents. Get everyone together for a proper celebration dinner." And just like that, the darkness I'd been pushing away came flooding back in. My parents. My brother. The thought of introducing them to this wonderful family made my stomach churn. Because here's the thing about my family. Growing up in my house was like living on a stage where my older brother Brandon was the star of every single show. The leading man. The main attraction. The reason anyone bought tickets. He was 2 years older than me. Effortlessly charming. Athletic in that natural way some people just are without trying. Good looking too, with the kind of face that got him out of trouble and into opportunities. He was the son, capital letters, the one they'd been waiting for. And I was just a little planet that quietly orbited around him, perpetually in his shadow, perpetually invisible, the understudy who never got to perform. Our family photo albums were a testament to this dynamic. I found them once when I was about 15, tucked away in the attic, and spent an entire afternoon looking through them. Page after page of Brandon hitting home runs in Little League, Brandon holding debate trophies, Brandon at science fairs with projects that our mom had clearly helped with, Brandon smiling between our proud parents at every milestone, and then there'd be me, in the corner of a shot somewhere, out of focus, sometimes not pictured at all. There was one entire album from a family vacation to the Grand Canyon where I appeared in exactly 2 photos, both times in the background, Like I was just some random tourist who happened to photobomb their perfect family trip. I remember one Christmas when I was about 9 years old. It's the memory that always comes back first when I think about my childhood. All I wanted was this big Lego space station set. I'd circled it in the toy catalog for months, drew arrows pointing to it, left the catalog open on the kitchen counter as a hint, mentioned it approximately 3,000 times. On Christmas morning, I tore through my presents with that desperate hope kids have, but the Lego set wasn't there. Instead, I got some hand-me-down clothes that were 2 sizes too big, a book about birds that I'd never expressed any interest in, and a pack of socks. Socks. For a 9-year-old. On Christmas. Then Brandon opened his last gift, the big one that had been sitting under the tree taunting me all morning. It was the Lego space station. "We knew you'd love it, sweetie," my mother cooed at him, clapping her hands together. "You're so good at building things." He wasn't. That was the thing. Brandon had never shown the slightest interest in building anything. He'd get bored and smash whatever he was working on after 5 minutes. I was the one who would spend hours in my room patiently putting models together piece by piece. I was the one who actually wanted that set. I looked at my dad, my eyes pleading. Surely he saw the injustice. Surely he would say something. He just shrugged. "Your brother's older, Nathan. He gets first pick. You know the rules." What rules? What rules said the older kid got to take what the younger kid actually wanted? I'd never heard these rules before. They seemed to appear whenever convenient to justify whatever Brandon was getting. Brandon ripped open the box with that careless violence he approached everything with, dumped the pieces on the floor, clicked a few together randomly, not even following the instructions. Got frustrated when it didn't immediately look like the picture on the box. "This is stupid," he declared after about 5 minutes, and kicked the whole pile. Plastic bricks went scattering under the sofa, behind the TV stand, everywhere. 1,000 pieces of my dreams spread across the living room floor like shrapnel. My parents didn't say anything, didn't tell him to pick them up or be more careful. They just turned on the TV and started watching whatever Christmas programming was on. Later that night, long after everyone was asleep, I crept downstairs. Spent 3 hours on my hands and knees, collecting every single piece from wherever it had landed. Then I sat in the dark living room and started building, piece by piece, following the instructions by the light from the street lamp outside. By morning, the space station was complete. When Brandon saw it, he immediately claimed he'd finished it himself. "Told you I could do it," he said smugly. My parents praised his genius, his persistence, his talent. I never said a word. That was my role. The silent, invisible stagehand in the grand production of Brandon's perfect life. The guy who did the work so the star could take the credit. That pattern continued through our entire childhood and into our adult years. It never stopped. It never even slowed down. Brandon was the popular jock, the life of every party, the guy everyone wanted to know. I was the quiet, nerdy kid who got straight A's, stayed out of trouble, and was invisible anyway. You'd think academic success would be something my parents would be proud of. You'd think bringing home report cards covered in A's would merit some recognition. Wrong. To them, my good grades were just weird. Another way I failed to be more like Brandon. Another sign that something was wrong with me. "Don't be a show-off, Nathan," my father would say whenever I brought home a perfect report card. "Nobody likes a know-it-all. You need to be more social like your brother." Meanwhile, Brandon would scrape by with C's and D's, and they'd throw him a party for not failing. When he passed algebra on his 3rd attempt, they took him out for a steak dinner. When I got a perfect score on the SATs, they forgot to pick me up from the testing center, and I had to walk 3 miles home. When I got accepted to my dream university on an academic scholarship, full ride, one of the most prestigious programs in the country, my parents' reaction was a distracted, "That's nice." My mom was on the phone with Brandon's basketball coach at the time, discussing his potential for a sports scholarship that never materialized. They didn't come to my high school graduation because Brandon had a basketball game that same day. A regular season game. Not playoffs, not championships, just a random Tuesday game against a team they'd already beaten twice that year. It meant absolutely nothing. But they went to that instead of watching me graduate valedictorian. When I graduated from college with honors, working part-time jobs the entire way through to support myself, because my parents had mysteriously not a cent for my education fund. They didn't attend that ceremony either. Brandon was going through a difficult time and needed their emotional support. His difficult time was a breakup with a girl he'd been dating for 3 weeks, a girl whose name he couldn't even remember a month later. Meanwhile, Brandon coasted through a state school on their dime, changing his major 4 times, taking 6 years to graduate with a communications degree and a GPA that barely qualified as passing. They paid for every cent of it. His tuition, his housing, his meal plan, his spending money. When he crashed his car junior year, they bought him a new one. Their investment in him never wavered. Their neglect of me never changed. So when Mr. Mitchell asked about meeting my parents, all those memories came rushing back. Every ignored achievement, every stolen moment, every time I was passed over so Brandon could shine, every Christmas, every birthday, every milestone where I was an afterthought at best. But I smiled and told him we'd arrange something. Because at that point, I still had hope. Stupid, naive, embarrassing hope that maybe, just maybe, my engagement would finally be the thing that made my parents see me. Finally be the achievement big enough to matter. The dinner was a disaster from the moment it started. I should have known. I should have called it off. But hope is a disease that's hard to cure. My parents showed up 20 minutes late. No apology. No explanation. Just strolled in like the world operated on their schedule. They spent the first half of the meal talking about Brandon, his new job at some sales firm, his amazing apartment, his busy social life, his recent vacation, his potential for a big promotion. Mr. and Mrs. Mitchell listened politely, but I could see the confusion in their eyes. This was supposed to be a dinner celebrating their daughter's engagement to me. Why were we talking about my brother? Why hadn't anyone asked a single question about the wedding? About our plans? About anything relating to why we were supposedly gathered? Then my mother dropped the bomb. Casually. Like she was mentioning the weather. Oh, and Brandon just got engaged too, she announced, beaming. To the most wonderful girl, Sophia. Her father owns a chain of car dealerships. Very successful family, very impressive. Mrs. Mitchell smiled graciously. How lovely. When's the wedding? My mother's eyes sparkled with that look she got when talking about Brandon's accomplishments. They're thinking June 15th. It's going to be beautiful. A golf club venue. Very elegant. The table went silent. Megan's hand found mine under the tablecloth and squeezed hard enough to leave marks. June 15th. That was our date. The date we'd chosen 3 months ago. The date we'd already sent save the dates for. The date that was on every piece of wedding planning material spread across our apartment. That's our wedding date, I said quietly. My mother blinked. What? June 15th. That's the date Megan and I chose. You knew that. I told you. I sent you the save the date. She waved her hand dismissively like I'd mentioned a minor scheduling inconvenience. Oh, I'm sure we can work something out. Maybe you could move yours. Brandon's fiancée has her heart set on June. It's the only month that works for her family's schedule. I stared at her. Move my wedding. She was actually suggesting I move my wedding so Brandon could have his on the same day. So he could steal another moment. So he could continue to be the center of the universe. Mr. Mitchell cleared his throat. When he spoke, his voice was calm, but there was steel underneath. I don't think that's really appropriate, Mrs. Brennan. Nathan and Megan have had this date locked in for months. Deposits have been paid. Vendors have been booked. Guests have made travel arrangements. My father jumped in with that condescending smile he used when he thought he was being reasonable, but was actually being insufferable. With all due respect, our family has certain traditions. Brandon is the eldest. It's only right that his wedding takes priority. I'm sure your vendors would understand. The audacity was breathtaking. They were sitting at a table with people who actually loved and respected me. People who had welcomed me into their family with open arms. And they were casually suggesting I rearrange my entire wedding so their favorite son could have his moment. Megan's father handled it with more grace than I ever could have. More grace than they deserved. I see, he said simply. His tone was polite but final. Well, I'm sure everyone will figure out what works best for their own families. The dinner ended shortly after. My parents left without saying goodbye to the Mitchells. Just a quick wave in my general direction and they were gone. Already on the phone with someone, probably Brandon, laughing about something. That night, Megan held me while I processed what had happened. They're not going to change, she said softly. You know that, right? They're never going to be different. I did know. I'd always known. But there's a difference between knowing something in your head and feeling it shatter in your heart. We're keeping our date, I said. Obviously, she replied. And Nathan, whatever happens, I chose you. My family chose you. That's not going to change. Ever. Over the next few months, I did something I'd never done before. I stopped hoping things would be different and started paying attention to how they actually were. Really paying attention. To Brandon. To his fiancée. To this whole situation that smelled fishier by the day. And what I discovered was illuminating. Brandon didn't have a great job. He had a mediocre position at a mid-tier sales firm where he did the bare minimum and coasted on charm. The big promotion my parents kept mentioning was pure fiction. His boss had actually put him on a performance improvement plan 2 months earlier. His amazing apartment was actually being subsidized by our parents to the tune of $1,000 a month. Money they'd claimed not to have when I needed help with college. And his fiancée, Sophia? Let's just say her interest in my brother seemed directly proportional to how much she thought he was worth. She name-dropped designer brands constantly, asked pointed questions about family assets, and had already been planning how to redecorate my parents' house. I also discovered something else. Something that explained everything. Brandon hadn't just happened to pick June 15th for his wedding by coincidence. He'd done it deliberately, on purpose, with malicious intent. I found out through my uncle Richard, the one family member who'd always treated me fairly. He was my dad's younger brother, the black sheep who'd made his own money and kept his distance from family drama. He'd overheard Brandon talking to our parents about the date selection. If I have my wedding on the same day, Brandon had said laughing, they'll have to choose. And we all know who they're going to choose. This way, Nathan's little wedding won't steal any attention from mine. Can't have people talking about the nerds party when they should be focused on me. He'd planned it. Deliberately. Strategically. He knew our parents would pick him, and he wanted to make sure my day was ruined in the process. It wasn't enough to be the favorite. He had to make sure I lost. When Uncle Richard told me this, something shifted inside me. The last shred of hope I'd been carrying around died. But in its place, something else grew. Clarity. Purpose. I wasn't going to move my wedding. I wasn't going to beg my parents to attend. I wasn't going to fight or argue or try to change their minds. I was going to let them make their choice. And then I was going to let the consequences of that choice play out naturally. Because here's what Brandon and my parents didn't know. Mr. Mitchell wasn't just my future father-in-law. He was one of the most connected businessmen in the region. His firm did comprehensive background research on every potential business partner and associate. It was standard practice, due diligence. And when he'd heard about Sophia's family and their supposedly impressive car dealership empire, he'd done a little digging, just curious, just being thorough. What he found was very interesting. June 15th arrived bright and beautiful. Clear skies, perfect temperature, the kind of day that felt like the universe was giving its blessing. Our ceremony was at a gorgeous garden venue that Megan had dreamed about since she was a little girl. White flowers everywhere, an arch covered in roses, string lights waiting to twinkle when evening came. The Mitchells had insisted on helping with the costs, treating me like I was already their son, like I'd always been their son. My parents, of course, weren't there. They'd made their choice 3 weeks earlier with that phone call. They were at Brandon's wedding across town at some fancy golf club, probably posing for photos and telling everyone who'd listen about their amazing eldest son. But here's the twist they didn't see coming. Brandon's wedding was scheduled for 2 p.m. Ours was at 11 a.m. We'd planned it that way on purpose. By the time they were sipping whatever they serve at golf club receptions, I was already married, already happy, already surrounded by people who actually cared about me. The ceremony was everything I'd never dared to dream of. Megan walked down the aisle looking like an angel, her father's arm linked with hers, both of them crying happy tears. Her parents sat in the front row, her mother dabbing at her eyes, her father nodding at me with this look of pride I'd never received from my own dad. My Uncle Richard was there, standing in for the family that should have been present. He'd flown in from across the country just to be there. Someone from the Brennan side should witness this, he'd said. Someone who actually has a functioning heart. When I said I do, I meant it with every fiber of my being. This woman had seen me, really seen me. Not the invisible kid, not the lesser brother, me. And she'd chosen me anyway. That meant more than anything my birth family could have ever given me. The reception was in full swing, people laughing and dancing and celebrating. When it happened. Around 4 p.m., a commotion started near the entrance. The music didn't stop, but voices rose. I turned to look and felt my stomach drop. There were my parents. My mother in an ostentatious dress clearly chosen to outshine everyone. My father in an expensive suit I'd never seen before. And behind them, Brandon and Sophia, still in their wedding attire. The bride's dress probably cost more than my car. They hadn't come to celebrate with me. They hadn't come to apologize or make amends. The expressions on their faces made their purpose crystal clear. They'd come to gloat. My mother spotted me and made a beeline over. That smug smile on her face that I knew so well. The smile that always preceded something cruel, dressed up as concern. "Oh, Nathan, what a cute little party," she said, loud enough for nearby guests to hear. Her voice dripped with condescension. "We just came from Brandon's wedding. It was absolutely magnificent. The golf club, the flowers, the 4-course meal. You should have seen it. Everyone who matters was there. The mayor, business leaders, important people." Brandon sauntered up behind her, Sophia clinging to his arm like a trophy. "Yeah, bro, sorry you missed it. Family obligations and all. Had to be with the real celebration. But hey, at least you had this, whatever this is. It's very quaint." Sophia giggled. "Is this one of those backyard receptions? How sweet. Very DIY. They'd come to humiliate me. On my wedding day, in front of my wife's family. They'd actually left their own reception early just to come here and rub my face in their choice. They actually thought this would break me." I saw Megan start to move toward us, protective fire in her eyes. I saw her mother rising from her seat, face flushed with anger. But before anyone could say anything, Mr. Mitchell stood up. "Excuse me," he said, his voice carrying across the reception. Not loud, not aggressive, just impossible to ignore. "I don't believe we've been properly introduced." My parents turned. My mother's eyes went wide when she recognized him. She knew exactly who Robert Mitchell was. Everyone in the business community did. His reputation preceded him by about a mile. "Mr. Mitchell," she stammered, suddenly trying to recalibrate her approach. "What a pleasure. I'm Nathan's mother, and this is my eldest son Brandon and his new bride Sophia." Mr. Mitchell smiled. It wasn't a warm smile. "Ah, yes, Brandon. I've heard quite a bit about you." He turned to Sophia. "And you must be Frank Giordano's daughter. Your father owns Giordano Motors, correct? Sophia preened, tossing her hair. That's right. The biggest dealership chain in the tri-state area. Daddy's very successful. Mr. Mitchell nodded thoughtfully. Interesting, because I had my research team look into Giordano Motors when I heard about your engagement to Nathan's brother. Standard due diligence, old habit from the finance world, and what they found was quite illuminating. The color started draining from Sophia's face. Your father's dealerships aren't just struggling, they're hemorrhaging money. Massive losses every quarter. He's been hiding debts from investors, rolling negative equity into new loans, running what amounts to a financial shell game that would make Bernie Madoff nervous. My analysts estimate he's about 18 months from complete insolvency, maybe less. The reception had gone dead silent. Every single guest was watching. Even the band had stopped playing. Mr. Mitchell continued, his tone almost conversational, like he was discussing the weather. It appears Miss Giordano here wasn't marrying for love. She was marrying for money. Specifically, she was under the impression that Brandon here came from a wealthy family. A family that had just paid for a $50,000 wedding at a golf club. A family that could bail out her father's failing business. He turned to Brandon, whose face had gone the color of old milk. The only problem is, your family isn't wealthy, are they, Brandon? In fact, I believe your parents took out a second mortgage on their home to pay for your wedding. An investment, they called it. They thought marrying their golden boy to a dealership heiress would open doors. Business opportunities. A comfortable retirement, funded by someone else's success. My mother made a strangled sound. Instead, Mr. Mitchell said, they've shackled themselves to a sinking ship. And you've married a woman who was only interested in what she thought you had, not who you are. Although, to be fair, who you are isn't particularly impressive either. He turned to my parents. You spent decades investing everything in the wrong son. You neglected Nathan, belittled his achievements, refused to attend his milestones. You chose Brandon's basketball games over Nathan's valedictorian speech. You chose Brandon's 3-week breakup over Nathan's college graduation. You paid for Brandon's 6-year degree while Nathan worked nights and took out loans. My father's mouth opened and closed. No words came out. And for what? Mr. Mitchell continued. For a son who peaked in high school and has been coasting ever since. For a daughter-in-law who sees your family as nothing more than a financial life raft for her drowning father. He gestured around at the reception, at the flowers, the lights, the happy guests, the love that filled every corner. Meanwhile, the son you threw away built something real. He earned his position at my company through merit, not nepotism. He went through 3 rounds of interviews and competed against 40 other candidates. He earned my respect. He earned my daughter's love, and he earned his place in this family. Something none of you ever gave him the chance to do in yours. The silence stretched for what felt like hours. Then Sophia turned to Brandon, her face twisted with rage, mascara starting to run. You told me your family had money. You said this wedding was just the beginning. You said your father had connections. You lied to me. I thought, Brandon stammered. We're done, Sophia spat. I'm calling my lawyer first thing tomorrow. This marriage is over. She stormed out, her expensive dress trailing behind her, her expensive shoes clicking against the floor. My parents stood frozen, looking like they'd aged 20 years in 20 minutes. Brandon chased after Sophia, calling her name, his voice cracking with desperation. Mr. Mitchell straightened his jacket and looked at my parents one last time. I think it's time for you to leave. This is Nathan's day, and you've already missed enough of his life. My father finally found his voice. Barely. Nathan, please. We didn't know. I looked at him, at my mother, at the people who had made me feel worthless for 29 years. You made your choice, I said. My voice was calm, steady. A long time ago, and again 3 weeks ago when you called to tell me you were going to his wedding instead of mine, and again when you walked in here today to mock me on my wedding day. You've made the same choice over and over my entire life. I took Megan's hand. I'm making mine now. Please leave. They left. No argument, no fight, just 2 broken people shuffling out of a party they were never really invited to. The reception resumed. Someone started the music again. People started talking, laughing, celebrating, and for the first time in my life, I felt genuinely free. I found out the rest through Uncle Richard over the following months. Every update was better than the last. Brandon and Sophia's marriage lasted exactly 11 days before she filed for annulment. That had to be some kind of record. Turns out when you build a relationship entirely on lies and financial calculations, it doesn't survive contact with reality. The massive diamond ring Brandon had bought her on credit, returned. The deposits on the house they'd been planning to buy, forfeited. The golf club reception that cost more than some people's yearly salary, a bill that would haunt my parents for years. Sophia disappeared from their lives completely. Last anyone heard, her father's dealerships did collapse about a year later. Some kind of fraud investigation. But that was their problem now. Brandon himself went into a complete tailspin. With his marriage imploded and his reputation ruined, the fragile house of cards he called a career collapsed too. Turns out nobody wants to hire the guy who got publicly exposed at his brother's wedding reception. He moved back in with my parents, into his old childhood bedroom. 31 years old, sleeping in the same room where his participation trophies still line the shelves. And my parents? They lost everything. The second mortgage they'd taken out for Brandon's wedding proved to be the final nail in the coffin. Combined with my father's growing health issues and the medical bills that came with them, they couldn't keep up with the payments. The bank foreclosed on the house they'd lived in for 30 years. They moved into a small rental apartment on the bad side of town. Brandon was still living with them, last I heard, working whatever odd jobs would have him. They tried to contact me once, about a year after the wedding. My mother called from an unknown number. "Nathan," she said, her voice thin and reedy. "We need your help. Your father's health isn't good. The medical bills are piling up. We're behind on rent. They're talking about eviction." I listened. I felt nothing. It was like hearing a story about strangers on the news. "And Brandon," she continued, her voice breaking, "he can't find a job. No one will hire him. If you could just talk to Mr. Mitchell, put in a good word, help him get back on his feet." The audacity was breathtaking. After everything they'd done, after decades of neglect, after trying to sabotage my wedding, they wanted me to use the connections they'd mocked me for to save the son they'd chosen over me. I let the silence stretch out. Let it get uncomfortable. "No," I said finally. "What?" "No. I won't talk to Robert. I won't give you money. The choices you made, the investment you placed in Brandon, those are your burdens to bear now. You made your bed." I heard a strangled sob on the line, but I wasn't finished. "You are my biological parents. That's a fact of nature that I can't change. But you're not my family. My family is here with me now. My life is here. And you're no longer part of it." I hung up, blocked the number, and felt nothing but the quiet, clean finality of a door closing for the last time.